America, we don't have a tax problem. We've got a third world problem. This is not an exaggeration. The United States collects over $2.4 trillion in income taxes every year, and then burns $1.5 trillion through fraud, waste, and third world robbery. If the elites actually did their jobs and cut out the waste, the government would only need about $900 billion to function. And here's the crazy part. That would mean anyone earning under $500,000 a year could pay zero income tax, and everything would still be fully funded. So if this money isn't funding our future, whose dream is it really building? Look at Minnesota. The Somali daycare scandal gave us the answer. Billions of dollars you worked for, money meant to feed hungry kids, was diverted through fake daycare centers, phantom meals, and paperwork designed to approve, not question. No kids, no food, just checks. Your hard-earned labor was turned into Lamborghinis, beachfront mansions, and luxury vacations most of us will never experience, even after a lifetime of honest work. On top of that, your tax dollars were routed to foreign organizations the U.S. military is fighting. Let that sink in. We went from defending liberty to bankrolling the threat. That's not compassion. That's collapse. And when systems fail like this, they don't admit mistakes. They don't apologize for wasting your money. They dig deeper into your pockets to fund their failure.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Happy to see you all this morning. Happy Monday. I don't know what's going on with my system. I don't think I'm having technical issues. I just want to point out very quickly that something doesn't seem quite right, but I don't know what it is. Good morning, Linda. Good morning, Sherry. And Moss CCW, you made a comment before I even started the show. I don't even know how that's possible, so I'm not sure what's going on. Good morning, Carl. Hopefully you guys are having a great morning. And Carl, I think that was you on YouTube. How in the world did you comment on YouTube before we even started the show? It's like a strange morning. My normal message didn't pop up. But that's normal for a Monday, isn't it? Things go weird, a little haywire after Monday. I'm Tabitha Hassell, of course, with Tabs on Tap. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Rob. Thank you, Sherry. And I think I said good morning to you, Brenda. Another morning, just another crazy morning. Lots going on as usual. We have Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard joining us here in just a few moments. And, we're going to talk about a lot of things. If you saw that little snippet I just played, what about taxes? Here we've been made to believe that we have to pay, 73 to 75 cents of every dollar you earn ends up being paid back into the tax system. And people will say, oh, that's not true. It's if I look at my paycheck, that's not what it looks like. Well, okay, but you get your payroll taxes taken out, your federal taxes, your state taxes, sometimes city taxes, whatever you have on your payroll. But then you take that money that you've just gotten back, and then that money, you go buy groceries, you're paying more taxes. You go buy gasoline, you're paying taxes. If you smoke, you're paying taxes. If you drink, you're paying taxes. Obviously, if you eat, you're paying taxes. So you're paying more taxes back out on everything. But then we find out that all of that tax money that you're paying into all of these different sources is being funneled to all these different channels that is supporting terrorism, that's buying Chelsea Clinton a beautiful $11 million home, that's ending up in the pockets of all these folks in Congress and other people we've never even heard of. Some of it being funneled back into the riots we see on the street. So we're going to talk about that. Should we even have to pay taxes? What would it look like if we didn't have all of the fraud that's taking place? And trust me, there's a lot. Colonel Joe Adams, I'm going to pop him here in about 2 seconds. He's going to talk to us about, he was going to join us on Friday, couldn't. So we're going to talk about it today. We've talked about that Islamic terror threat in the past. A warning, we're told by the FBI, this is a real warning. Be on the lookout. He's going to give us some new information on that. We're talking a little bit about Iran, Israel, coming out and saying that they're ready for that first strike against Iran. And then, how do we not talk about it? We've got to talk about Nancy Guthrie, and we've got to talk about the case. I know a lot of people are tired of hearing about it, but it is a very important case for a lot of different reasons. And so we'll get to that towards the end. No more important, of course, than anyone else that's missing. It just happens to be more in the public. So we're going to get to why it's more in the public and what's going on with that case. We'll see if Colonel Adams can stick around with us that long to talk about it. Sorry, Carl, didn't mean to dox you. Good morning, Phyllis. Good morning, Nancy. Let me grab Colonel Adams here. We'll see if he's ready. And let's see here. I think he's ready. Let's grab him, Colonel. Joe Adams, welcome to Tabs on Tap. Good morning. Happy Monday morning. And how was your weekend? Anything exciting going on with the Washington Guard?
Not this last weekend. No, not really. I mean, Super Bowl pretty much took the main stage, so everybody's preoccupied with the Super Bowl. Not me.
Yeah, we're going to have to talk about Super Bowl too
Yeah,
in a few moments.
yeah, but I boycotted NFL when that guy took his knee, and the NFL didn't do something about it. I'm done with the NFL.
Me too.
I'm my own personal boycott. I don't, and I was a great football fan. I mean, I played college ball and was the best athlete in my high school, and I was a really big fan. And I knew a lot of the players, but I'm done. I'm done with the NFL.
I'm the same way, Colonel Adams. I think it was back in 2016, I believe it was, is when I first noticed these folks kneeling. I know NFL players, and in my personal life, I've had one that just recently worked for me. I get along with them perfectly fine. And I've heard some of them, most of the ones I know are hardworking Christians. They support the United States. They certainly, have a lot of respect for our flag. But I know a couple who are ones that have kneeled. I'll be like, why would you do that? And they're like, because, this flag doesn't represent me. I'm like, no, that flag represents all of us here in America. And it always amazes me that people think that we're so oppressed here in the United States when really, we live. Now, I realize there's a lot of poverty in the United States as well, but we are a very wealthy country and we have a lot of freedoms here that you certainly don't have in other countries. And, I always feel like telling people, well, maybe you should take a vacation and walk down a dark street at night in one of these other countries, and you'll know what oppression actually feels like. Things are not quite that way in St. Louis. And I would actually like to say, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, Colonel Adams, but, when it comes to that type of situation and in racism, if you put a black man or a black woman and they walked through my neighborhood and they were walking, people would probably stop and ask them if they need a ride. Are you okay? I think most white neighborhoods would do the same. Now, I'm not saying everyone, because we know there's been a couple of cases where that wasn't the case. But if you drop me off in a predominantly black neighborhood, I'm probably not going to survive. And I know that sounds like a crazy thing to say, and I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I think we all know it's true. One of my biggest fears in life has been driving through parts of North St. Louis when I'm cutting down and my car breaking down or somebody pulling up to me. I'm actually scared when a car drives next to me or sits next to me at a stoplight, because they might look over and say, look at this white girl, and just shoot me for absolutely no reason. I mean, the hate we feel is real, whether people accept it or not.
No, it's real. And if I find myself, unfortunately, driving through North County, of course, my weapon's holstered on me. At that point of entering those areas, I take the gun out of the holster and just put it in my lap and just drive with one hand. So I'm cutting down the time factor of having to draw the weapon. That's how bad it is. Dave, that's reality. That's reality. It's not some kind of phobia. That's reality. Too bad, but that's the way it is. So
I'm scared of the white liberal women too, quite honestly. If I was driving through parts of Minneapolis right now and I came up to an intersection, Colonel Adams, I'm sure you know this. And we have talked about the Taliban many times, but there's parts of Minneapolis right now, probably other areas in the United States too, where we have these white liberal women. Predominantly, they're blocking intersections. They're taking your license plate and calling it into their little, comrade communication center. And then once you're okay that your license plate has not been identified as ICE, they allow you to pass. Those people I might actually scare me more than some of the gangbangers.
Yeah, I wouldn't dare go up there because I know I'd get in trouble because I'm not going to put up with that crap. So let them eat them. This is why tigers eat their young. Just look at those blue-haired, middle class, overweight white women. Yes. Oh, speaking of problem, I happen to know a psychiatrist in St. Louis, not because I'm a patient, even though my wife thinks I should be. I happened to have a conversation with him last week after your show, and I forget, there was another. He called me and I've known him for years. And before he got off the phone, I said, "Hey, do me a favor. Tell me, when people ask, what is wrong with these people? Why are these people doing this? Why are these people trying to keep their Somalis, brothers and sisters, white people, from being deported? Why is this?" And they forget about the fraud and all the money they took from kids, hungry children. So, and he goes, self-worth. I go, what? He goes, self-worth. It's that easy to explain. And I said, okay, we'll break that down, Doc. And he says, these people that are involved in these protests, there's two facets to this. First of all, they send in professional agitators. We know that. But they also send in professional groomers. They actually have a list of questions they ask these people when they interview them. So by participating in these crazy events that are totally wrong, and if they sit them down, they would admit it. No, they're semi-brainwashed, because these people that go to these events and riot and fight ICE and are counterproductive to ICE are looking for self-worth. These agitators and the groomers convince these people that by doing this, they're doing something worthwhile. And these people are lost. That's the profile of the people they recruit. They're reaching out for once in their life, they're doing something worthwhile. It's based on self-worth.
Even if it's hinged in mental illness.
So there's your answer from a top psychiatrist in the United States. It's a psychological thing of self-worth, and that's why they participate.
It makes sense, because we've talked before about groups like Antifa and how, I don't want to use the word misfits, but there's not really a good word for it. But a lot of the folks that join groups like Antifa, there are people who didn't feel like they belong anywhere else in society. They've never been accepted as part of any type of group or clique, and they don't feel the same as everyone else. So within a group like Antifa, they feel like they've finally found their people, and they have that acceptance that they've been looking for. But unfortunately, they're willing to die for it, and that's a real problem.
Yeah, that's why they got groomers. They're convinced. They were always looking for something to make them feel that they were worthwhile on this planet, and that's your answer.
And
hey,
you know,
but you meant,
wait, hold on 1 second. Don't get ahead of me yet, because we got to backtrack for just a second. Before we move forward, we have to backtrack, because I wanted to add something else before we get too far down the line about Super Bowl. Because, Colonel Adams, I don't know if you watched the halftime show, if you watched it, or if you watched the TPUSA. I actually was very busy yesterday. I watched a little bit of the TPUSA, All-American halftime show. I did not watch any part of the NFL. But what I've heard this morning is that the All-American halftime show by Turning Point, they had over 25 million viewers. And all of the numbers are not even in yet from all of their sources. Concurrently, at one time, they had about 24 people watching all at once. And I wanted to show a little clip real quick about the Kid Rock's entrance. Then I'm going to ask you what you think about this.
My name is Kid.
Okay, now I love Kid Rock, Colonel Adams. I don't know what you think. I love Kid Rock. I went to his, what do you even call it? The rock, I can't remember, rock something concert where I literally almost died a couple years ago. I was like a music festival all weekend long. He's fantastic. He's a true American. Absolutely love him. Lots of other great Americans there participating as well. But Elon Musk calls it the woke mind virus that was going on at the other halftime show. I'm just curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I thought it was great. I intended to just watch the halftime show with because of Charlie Kirk, but that's all I watched. I didn't watch the game. But if I had to comment on his entrance, the vest he's wearing, that fur vest. If anybody ever sees me wearing that vest or a vest like that, and I die, take it off of me, okay? Do not wear me in a vest like that. So anyway, we expect that's Kid Rock. Love the guy. He is a true patriot.
I absolutely love him. I am so thrilled that Turning Point had their own halftime show. But at the same time, I made a post yesterday on Facebook where I was talking about, though, I do hate the division. I wish we could go back to a time where all Americans wanted to watch the Super Bowl. We had those big Super Bowl parties. It was a great momentous occasion, in the year. And even though I didn't care about football, I would still go just for the
Mhm.
fun and the halftime show and the commercials. Now, Bad Bunny, I don't know a lot about Bad Bunny. I don't know any of his music. I did not watch yesterday, so I really can't give a good comment on it. But I will tell you, I recognize Puerto Ricans as being Americans. I don't have a problem with that. From what I understand, it was not political. The only issue I think I would probably take with that is that I would welcome a Puerto Rican, artist to do the halftime show. I like that type of music generally. But the guy is definitely part of the woke mind virus, no question about it. And secondly, I do think it should have been in English.
I couldn't agree more. But Dumb Bunny. But if you look at Dumb Bunny's, I didn't know this because I don't wouldn't listen to him if I had to. Some of the lyrics in his songs are not appropriate for children.
Correct.
They're
That is
quite
correct.
graphic, and that's all I had to say. I mean, that's why I call him Dumb Bunny. But he's a sign of the times. With all the crazy idiots out there, he's a byproduct of all the insanity that's going on in the United States. And yes, 100% English. So
Right, exactly. I don't have a problem with a Puerto Rican theme, from what I could see. He was portraying his life growing up in Puerto Rico and things being difficult. And then he, took on these different jobs and all these different things. And hey, this is a message to other people that you can be just like him. I don't have any problem with that messaging. It's just the fact that he's a very controversial character. I don't have any problem with Spanish speaking people, but to me, if you're in the United States, if you live here, if you're an American citizen, you absolutely should speak and read English. And more than anything, it is something that's like the halftime show, something that's the Super Bowl, which is about as American as you can get, should be in English.
well, it used to be. It used to be. It all started with Kaepernick in the knee thing. That's when it started. But the NFL sold out, and then now they're paying for it. They know that. So, babe, uh, you said something. What did you say? Oh, you mentioned Antifa. So
Hmm.
I need some help here, and Carl, especially you. So I get a call from a law enforcement yesterday, asking me, do I know anything about the run on handgun ammunition? And I said, well, no, I haven't bought ammunition in years. I always said if I ever if my wife and I go through the ammunition that we have, it's the end of the world anyway.
Right,
So okay, but
right.
he said no about Antifa, and I said, what are you talking about? In fact, this police officer. So he said he went into a gun shop Saturday and to pick up some handgun ammunition for a new gun that he got, and they had no handgun ammunition. They didn't have any
Mm.
handgun ammunition except for the aluminum casings, cheap stuff. So he asked the guy, "Where's all your ammunition?" He said, "I can't get any because these guys buy from the particular dealers." Okay, so and they usually have 5 or 6 dealers they go to buy ammunition or guns, anything. So, and this is not the gun shop in Washington. This is another gun shop in Franklin County. And he said that the dealer told him it's because of Antifa in the coming Civil War. He told a cop that. So the cop calls me because he knows I'm on top of this stuff. And he goes, and I said, well, yeah, they're arming themselves. And in fact, with the plot that was foiled by the FBI that we're going to talk about involves large amounts of ammunition. So here's a gun shop who's a regular customer that has no ammunition. Now they had rifle ammunition, but his last order didn't. And he doesn't know when he's going to get any. So if any of you people out there know somebody in a gun shop, call them. But the dealer that sells the ammunition to the gun shop mentioned Civil War, and he mentioned Antifa is the reason they couldn't get ammunition. What is that all about?
Well, we I don't know if you remember this. Maybe, I don't know, 2 months ago, a month ago, we kind of briefly touched base on this where there was these Facebook posts going around, and then they very quickly deleted them. Neither you or I could find any information about it. And they were talking about, if I remember the date correctly, I think it was February 27th was supposed to be the start of their civil war. And I remember us talking about it, but whatever is going on, they're keeping it very much under wraps, and they're trying to make sure that we don't know what they have planned. And somebody had threatened, I can't recall who it was, but it might have been Nick Sorter. There was somebody that someone had threatened, and they said, "This is the day, I'm coming for you," and they showed him murdered and in a ditch, and he said, "This is the day it starts." And I've talked to a couple different people who said something about the significance. I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it was February 27th. Deanna, your significant other might recall, because her and I kind of messaged about trying to find something on it, and we just couldn't find anything. I do think there's something planned. I don't know what. I don't know from what time or where, but these people have lost their minds. I was going through my hate mail this morning, Colonel Adams, hundreds of messages from people, "Die, I hope you die," and all just the craziest stuff you can imagine, because these people, they've lost their minds. It is true. Mental illness is running rampant in this country right now, and all those mentally ill folks have all gathered together. But before you respond, one thing I want to say is that I don't blame this on Democrats, and I don't blame it on liberals. And the reason why is because these folks who are wanting to come out and start a civil war with us, these people don't like Democrats either. These people are anarchists. They're against government altogether. They're against law enforcement altogether. They hate us, but they hate Democrats the same.
Well, civil war is inevitable in this country. Now, what that's going to look like, we've talked about this before. The confusing thing is there's several different angles coming at us at the same time. Now, is Antifa planning something big? To think they're not would be naive. Now, again, we're under alert right now. Remember that affidavit that I produced saying that there will be an Islamic attack in this country, mass casualties, before the end of February.
Correct.
So, and that hasn't changed. In fact, the people who gave me that document or produced that document have sent me a new document, and it's just been declassified, but is not for public release. And I have that, and I'm willing to share that information. And the reason it's a unique situation because of their target. So, because I'm the kind of guy that reads a book and will skip and see what the end is, because I can't wait, right? So when I was going through this document, I saw the planning process, how the FBI's got all these eight characters who were planning this thing on their own, and they were doing it to represent ISIS. Okay.
And now, Colonel Adams, before you give us the information, there's a lot of new people in the show today, so I want to make sure they understand what we're talking about. Yeah. And that is, it's something we've been talking about for quite some time now. And at one point, the FBI did release a statement that said, you and I got it before everybody else, and we had talked about it at that time. Since then, a lot of it's public, not what you're getting ready to talk about. But what they told us publicly is that they know, they can confirm, this is from the FBI, they confirm that these Islamic terror groups have went through at least 5 states, and they've purchased uniforms that are police uniforms, medical uniforms, first responder uniforms, military uniforms. They know that they have done this. And the goal is because they want to plan a 2-part attack at either hospitals or different types of medical institutions, and what their or health centers, I should say. What their goal is that they're going to come in, they're going to commit that first attack at a hospital. Of course, their goal is to take out as many people as they can, inflict as much damage as they can. Then what happens when there's a terror attack, right? Let's say you're in the waiting room of a large metropolitan hospital. There's 100 people in there because those waiting rooms are always very busy. And then you have a guy come in who looks like a doctor, and he just starts shooting everyone, or worse, maybe he's a suicide bomber. Well, then you're going to be looking for guidance, right? So then you're going to have The second part is that you're going to have somebody come out that looks like a first responder, probably a police officer, and they're going to say, hey, everybody, come this way. You're going to be safe over here. Then that's when the second wave of attacks start. And that's all I know. So, Colonel Adams, I am more than happy for you to fill us in on the new information that you have.
Yeah, and that attack that's planned for this month is because of Ramadan. Okay. And it's a tier 1 attack. In other words, tier 1 trauma centers are the main target because of mass casualty. But also in this when they've released, it's supposed to happen this month, is also including biological warfare.
Okay, now I hadn't heard that. Yeah, that's definitely new.
So the scenario is they're not going to kill power to the building because they want the ventilation system working when they launch a biological weapon, and people will take that home with them. There'll be survivors, but those survivors are going to go off campus. So now that we know that, I don't know how many thousands of people are in a hospital, but you can't cut them loose. You can't let them go home or go to Schnucks shopping because they spread the biological. So it's a delayed reaction biological weapon they're going to use. But anyway, it's in the plan. They're saying it's going to happen before the end of February. We'll see. But
could that be related to the biolabs that have recently been discovered? I know Carl had mentioned it. I did some research on it. There was a biolab a couple years ago in Los Angeles. The same guy owned a home, in Las Vegas. There's another one in Chicago. I've heard less about that one. But this one recently discovered in Las Vegas, I talked about this on Friday, is that they were using the home as an Airbnb. So they had their illegal biolab in the garage locked, and they were actively renting out the rest of the home as an Airbnb. It was only discovered because the occupants, for some Airbnb guests, became literally deathly ill. I have not checked up on their status. They went and sought emergency help, and then all of a sudden we find out that, whatever it is they had was something extremely rare. They said, oh, where are you staying? Oh, we were at this Airbnb. They go out, they break the door down, they look, over 1,000 vials. Some of them, quite honestly, is serious as Ebola. They literally had Ebola vials. They don't know what else they had. They're still analyzing it. I know they had malaria and hepatitis and COVID, but I've heard that they had some very serious things, maybe some things we've not even heard of.
Right. Well, somebody asked me yesterday, he said, why would they be so dumb to put a lab in an Airbnb? I said, well, that's
because... Is that dumb?
No. It was actually pretty sharp. No, because the neighborhood got used to seeing a lot of people coming and going. So
it was a master plan.
So if they even had to bring Chinese agents in for a meeting, it was common to see people coming and going. So they desensitized the neighborhood.
That's right.
And that's your answer.
These are pros. But do you think there's more biolabs, illegal biolabs? If we have 3, I mean, don't you think there's more?
Well, they took off some kids up north, I think up in Michigan. These were all teenagers making this stuff.
Crazy.
Teenagers, I mean, the worst thing I ever did was, stage that UFO sighting. I wasn't mixing chemicals, but the reason to think they've got all the labs in this country secured, wrong. It's mathematically no. There's more, and there's going to be more. But this new deal that was just completed, I believe November the 5th of last year, the investigation went on from July, and they took them off in November. And there's 8 people involved, of course, all jihadists. So the FBI is on these characters, and one character leads to another character, ends up being 8. Some of these guys travel to Turkey, take pictures with them standing in front of the ISIS flag, and their hope was after they complete a mission, they're going to leave and go to Turkey and join ISIS, but they're going to pull one here. And so the FBI, and think about what I'm going to say. The FBI, they were using encrypted whatever, and the FBI got behind it and got inside, right? A back door. So these characters, the main thing they're talking about is their hate for Israel and the Jews. So they want to stage a mass event. And by the way, it was a shooting event. All these characters went. The 8th guy is still overseas. They're going to get him. But these other people here in Michigan and New Jersey and Washington State went and bought AR-15 rifles and were observed going to ranges and shooting and practicing. I think the initial purchase was 1,600 rounds of 223 for the AR. So these guys are going to stage a mass event. There's some chatter back and forth between these guys about improvised explosive devices, even though I think maybe they were at the time, the FBI would love to give them an inert device. So basically, they were going to shoot a bunch of people up. So they started canvassing, looking for schedules of large events with little law enforcement security, open air events. And this thing was going to launch, and they talked about Halloween or Christmas or New Year's. So the FBI got enough on them, rounded them up, and stopped. So me being curious, I've got this document, it's still here. And so I went to the after action report. And in other words, these guys were looking for a target. And they traveled all over looking for a target. And the target they selected, you won't believe. They're gonna shoot up a gay bar. They decided. Really? This is why this is so interesting. They have all these targets, and all they talked about was the Jewish, right? And in the end result, to pull this off, they decided to go to into the gay community, and they started canvassing these things, and because they started following the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando, they were going to stage a similar event to that. So
I was just going to say, it's happened before.
Right. And then that's what they got arrested for.
Yeah.
So, correct me if I'm wrong, and I doubt that. Didn't these characters, I call them the alphabet people, Q, B, G, Y, T, whatever, don't these people understand that when they were out there protesting for pro-Palestinians, right, carrying the pride flag and stuff, they're supporting people who want to kill them.
No question about it. But it's a long. I'm not going to go down the road today. I could say in a way we all do, because we all do. I'm going to talk about what you're saying. But one time, this was years ago, I had a whole show about this. This was probably back in 2012 or something like that. But if you think about it, here in the United States, we have a lot of businesses that are owned by people who practice Sharia law, who absolutely hate us Americans, and they send their money back to their country that funds terrorism, yet we still go buy gasoline at these places or food from these places. But when it comes to the LGBTQ community, those people, not all of them, but that group as a whole largely does support the Islamic movement. A lot of them absolutely will stand up, some potentially willing to lose their lives to support the very people that would murder them if they had any opportunity. I remember when all this was going on with Syria, and in Syria, if you recall, this was, back under Obama's term, where everyone, all the liberals were watching CNN, and they had a reporter sitting right in the middle of East Aleppo, not telling anyone that just one block over was beautiful green grass and people sitting outside dining and having a good time. And then they're sitting, of course, right in the middle of what looks like a war zone, because that area had been seized by ISIS. And I remember liberals melting down, losing their mind, talking about how they supported Sharia law and ISIS and all these other groups, in Syria, and how much they hated Assad because he was a bad guy, because he attacked his own people with chemicals. And at the same time, the same people they were supporting, if you recall, were rounding up all the gay people in their communities and throwing them off buildings. Do you remember that? They were literally throwing them off buildings and burning them alive. No, they don't get it, Colonel Adams. They don't get it.
Well, the reason they chose a nightclub to shoot the gays up is because think about the lack of security at a nightclub. You got a couple bouncers. Yeah. That was the trigger. They were trying to find a target with the least amount of protection as possible. Boom. I don't think being gay should make you stupid.
Of course not.
But I don't know. Maybe it's a prerequisite. But
Colonel,
they are a target, and they're going to continue to be a target. At the same time, the gays are supporting ISIS personnel. I don't get it.
I don't get it either, and it's been a conversation I've had dozens and dozens of times over the years. But you know what it is? I call it the brainwashing. The you need to turn your TV off and gain a few more brain cells, because what they're, not you, of course, them, and what it is they're watching MSNBC, they're watching CNN, they're watching The View, and all of these people are saying, oh yeah, we have to support these people who want Sharia law, because here in the United States we're a free country and they're allowed to practice their religion even if their religion wants you dead. But see, they don't tell them that part on MSNBC. They don't tell them that part. They tell them that we're lying, that we're just racist and xenophobic, and that none of that stuff is true. And then you see every once in a great while, you'll see somebody move to one of these other countries and very quickly come back when they realize exactly what it's like.
It's like, well, I guess this spins back to what the psychiatrist told me, self-worth. So being a part of the gay community is not enough. And so they're using the pro-ISIS, pro-Palestinian platform to enhance their self-worth. Anyway, that's what the psychiatrist said.
Yeah,
But
and it's all about brainwashing.
Yeah, but Paul chimed in and commented the fact that they picked a target that was most vulnerable. Yeah, right. That's exactly why they picked that when they got down to it, because their plan was to pull the mission. And by the way, suicide vests were never mentioned. So this was not a suicide attack. They planned on surviving, returning to Turkey, and joining ISIS military.
And Colonel Adams, there's really nothing you can do to plan for it or prevent it. I have doctor appointments coming up, and I'm not going to, stay home and not go to my doctor appointments because there could be a terror attack planned, at my hospital. I know when they first came out with that plan, there were certain cities mentioned, I think Orlando, Miami, there was somewhere in Texas, maybe Houston or Austin. I can't really recall what cities were mentioned, but it could happen anywhere at any time. We face a lot of threats right now from a lot of different angles.
Yeah, the only closest tier 1 trauma we have in the description of what they're looking for is Barnes Hospital.
Correct. Yeah.
But my concern is they've got a deadline to pull something. So if in fact Barnes has taken the correct steps, which they have, and we know about it, I would more concerned about them say, well, if we can't do that, we've got to do something. Let's take a smaller target like Washington, Missouri.
Yeah, I think Barnes would be tough. Well, it depends.
Yeah,
I think if they had their uniform where they looked like a law enforcement officer or a doctor, they could probably get through Barnes. But Barnes, if you've been there, they've got some pretty tight security. They've got metal detectors. But these people are well organized. They're not just like your average person who's coming in trying to commit a crime. They're going to have credentials. They're going to be able to pass through security. They have a plan to pass through security. There's no question about it.
Barnes is prepared as well as they can be.
They can be.
They have the rules and regulations about certain weapons on their protective service detail, and some of that's been, like, let's just say, modified. So, but one of the personnel at Barnes told me to tell you people, unless it's absolutely necessary during the month of February, don't go to the hospital. And that's what it comes down. I'm telling you, they told me to tell you. If you have a person in the hospital who's sick, a family member who you love, don't go visit. This is how serious it is. Stay away from hospitals. And I didn't make that up. I was told. Oh no, I was told to tell
believe you. We've been talking about this, for quite some time now, for several weeks, about the potential threat, and it's a real threat, but it's hard, and we have to be careful with the messaging, because if somebody's out there suffering a medical emergency or a heart attack or something, you definitely need to go to the hospital and go to the emergency room, and try not to think about terror attacks. But yeah, if you don't have to be there, don't go.
I've got a close friend of mine, one of the guardsmen, is in the hospital now, and he's been there for quite a while, and it's serious. Okay, I have not visited him in the hospital. Why? I'm not leaving my gun in the car.
Right.
And he
Right.
knows, and he knows that. And I got the chance to talk to him. And I said, you know why I can't come visit you? He goes, I know, Colonel. I understand. And I said, nothing's going to change. I'll see you when you get out. But for now, I can't do it. And and I tell all my guards people, don't go any place that you can't go armed.
Yeah.
This is
If you don't
serious.
have, correct. If you're having a medical emergency, though, what choice do you have? You don't want to advise people to not go to the hospital if they're having a medical emergency.
I'm not. I'm passing on a message.
I know.
Don't
I
shoot-
know. I'm not talking about you.
Don't shoot the messenger.
I'm not.
Don't
No.
shoot-
I'm not talking about you specifically. I'm just
Or
talking
don't
about
even-
in
Don't
general.
even try and shoot the messenger. Anyway, so that's the truth. So that's the truth.
And I'm glad you shared it with us because what do we do on the show? We try to make sure people are aware of what's going on, and we face a lot of threats that people don't even know about, like these. Thank you, Carl, for bringing up the bio labs. With these bio labs, trust me, if there's 3, there's many more, and at any given time, they could easily take these vials, take them to a shopping center or some other crowded place. We would never in a million years know they were there. And, and that's how a bioweapon attack happens. There's nothing you can do to prevent it other than, well, guess what? Staying away from crowded places. And but then people want to say on the flip side, they'll say, well, then we're just giving in to terrorism if we don't go to the crowded places. But Colonel Adams, people can say anything they want to me. I stopped going to festivals, fairs, crowded events several years ago, concerts, sporting events. I won't go. It's just not worth it to me.
I still go to certain events, but I'm not unarmed. And you're not supposed to, certain events you're not supposed to go to because a lot of it's part of the concealed carry law. So I don't know who this is. Where do you go? Let me read something here. He said, I want to comment on this. Somebody said that the security at who said that? Danger Insurance? Oh.
Are you talking about Mercy Hospital?
Somebody's got somebody going to Mercy Hospital right now. Somebody comment. Oh, there it is.
They said Mercy has the worst security.
It says the security team at Mercy is useless. Now, the security that they need at Mercy Hospital is lacking. Why do you think that they don't? You think that they're limited for certain level of security? Why do you think that the security at our hospital is so pitiful? Why do you think? You know why? Insurance. The insurance carriers won't allow it. That's why. This is true. When I met before the school board and asked them about protecting the different buildings and everything, and I said, what about if your teachers would go to class and become proficient with a firearm, would you let your teachers carry guns in the classroom? And the school board blew up. Oh, no. I said, why wouldn't you if they're qualified? Our insurance wouldn't let us.
Insurance, right? Insurance is a big deal. I know a lot of business owners who have contacted me about private security, and they're like, I know we're going to have problems, and they are having problems, and they want private security to come in because their own insurance won't allow them to hire their own security guards. So insurance does often stop certain locations from being more protected, just like most retail stores you go in, not protected because they don't want security to interact with these people. They'll say, yeah, be there as a deterrent, but if anybody actually tries to steal anything, just let them go.
Yeah, but I'm talking about hospitals and schools. So here we've got this distant insurance company telling them how safe they're allowed to do, what missions they're allowed to do to protect the patients, the visitor patients, and children. The insurance company's running the game.
Yeah, I didn't know that, but it doesn't surprise me.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
It's all
Now,
about
Colonel
machines.
Adams, I don't have a ton of time left. Do you want to add anything? Because I'm going to talk about taxes, and then I want to talk about the Nancy Guthrie case. Is there any other topics you wanted to cover before we move on? And
I got
I hope you stick around for those two topics. I don't know if you have time.
I got a lot of Guthrie information, so I've been working on
Well, good.
taxes.
You
I,
know, I don't know if you saw that little video I played coming into the show. If any of you
yeah,
didn't see it, go back to the beginning and watch it. But you know
well,
what I was saying,
that says it all. That video says it all.
it does. You know what? It does. It's really short. I mean, I can play it again. Let's just play it. It's only
America,
1
we
minute
don't have a
long.
tax problem. We've got a third world problem. This is not an exaggeration. The United States collects over $2.4 trillion in income taxes every year and then burns $1.5 trillion through fraud, waste, and third world robbery. If the elites actually did their jobs and cut out the waste, the government would only need about $900 billion to function. And here's the crazy part. That would mean anyone earning under $500,000 a year could pay zero income tax and everything would still be fully funded. So if this money isn't funding our future, whose dream is it really building? Look at Minnesota. The Somali daycare scandal gave us the answer. Billions of dollars you worked for, money meant to feed hungry kids, was diverted through fake daycare centers, phantom meals, and paperwork designed to approve, not question. No kids, no food, just checks. Your hard-earned labor was turned into Lamborghinis, beachfront mansions, and luxury vacations most of us will never experience, even after a lifetime of honest work. On top of that, your tax dollars were routed to foreign organizations the U.S. military is fighting. Let that sink in. We went from defending liberty to bankrolling the threat. That's not compassion. That's collapse. And when systems fail like this, they don't admit mistakes. They don't apologize for wasting your money. They dig deeper into your pockets to fund.
And you know what? It's with intent, isn't it, Colonel Adams? It's with intent. They want, they being the deep state, the cabal, the shadow government, whatever you want to call them, or you can refer to them as the Democrat regime if you'd like. What do they want? They want us all, and trust me, Republicans are just as involved. Republicans just as involved. And they want us out. They want us to be those little worker bees, like little ants on an ant farm, turn in our taxes, and they're going to keep increasing our taxes. As a matter of fact, my son is a smoker. He smokes cigarettes. I'm not happy about it. Certainly not proud about it. He bought a pack of cigarettes yesterday. It was $16 for one
Yeah.
pack of cigarettes. It's all taxes. And I looked at him like, have you lost your mind?
Yeah.
And
I just found out about that the other day. I was asking somebody. They were talking about smoking, quitting smoking. Is at the gun show, and I said, "Let me ask you a question. How much is a pack of cigarettes?" He says, "I smoke the cheap ones, $10 a pack." I go, "You got to be kidding me! If for no other reason, that's a good reason to quit."
I know, I couldn't believe it, $16. And you know, Colonel Adams, you know what's happening right now, and I'm preaching to the choir. If you're listening to this show, you already know. You know, we're paying those taxes in between payroll taxes, grocery taxes, food, you know, oh, we lost Colonel Adams. Hopefully he will be back. There he is. And we're paying in all these taxes. And you think that if you're a naive American, like many of us can be, you think that your money is going to fix your roads, it's going to the schools. You don't mind paying the taxes because you think it's making the United States a better place. Then you find out through the Department of Doge or through Donald Trump's administration or some of these other folks looking into Nick Sorter, some of these other people looking into things, citizen journalists, that actually your tax dollars is doing anything but what you think it is. It's actually going to fund these fake Somali daycare centers. It's going to millions of dollars to feed hungry children that aren't actually being fed. The hungry children don't actually exist. People are just taking the money in. It's being routed back to terror groups like Al-Shabaab. Again, we're not telling anybody anything they don't already know if you're watching the show, but here's the thing, Colonel Adams, we all know what the problem is. Now we're working towards solutions. Now, let's just say we cut out all the fraud, and strangely enough, Democrats are fighting to keep the fraud. I don't really understand why. What would our taxation look like? I mean, I would think it would be next to nothing.
I'll make a comment and then we'll talk about that. Okay, I love that video. It's perfect. Now, so if all the fraud was alleviated and that money wasn't lost, they're saying that anybody that makes under $500,000 a year would pay no taxes. That is ingenious. That's too much common sense. But let me tell you why that will never happen. Everybody making under $500,000 is middle class America. They will never, ever do that, because if middle class America all of a sudden was tax free and had that extra money, think how comfortable they would be. And they don't want them comfortable.
They
want
don't.
them poor.
They
There was
want
an
you
old
to be that.
cartoon where
Yeah.
there's an old cartoon where the IRS agent's got a guy by his feet, hanging him upside down, shaking out the change out of his pockets.
I know exactly the one
Yeah.
you're talking about. And
Yeah.
you're right. They want us to, you know what? They control us
Mhm.
by feeding us little bits and pieces, little breadcrumbs to say, okay, you know, Tabitha, you're going to go work, you're going to go pay your taxes, and if you're lucky, you'll have a little bit left over where you can take a vacation or live in a decent house or drive a decent car, go buy a couple steaks here and there. But we're going to continue taking taxes from you because we don't want you to get that far ahead. You know, we don't want you to have that type of freedom. And quite honestly, I think we know that the wealthier a person is, particularly if you're a business owner, there's loopholes. You know, there's a lot of very wealthy people and a lot of very wealthy corporations who pay zero tax. So, you know, it is the people under the $500,000 that put in the bulk of the taxes.
Yeah, but that's
I
because they got
I don't know about the bulk, but
the rich people's not paying taxes. That's because of tax deductions. They're spending money on their company, and they got, business expenses. That's why they're actually paying money. They're just not paying the tax because they get tax write-off benefits. And I don't believe I'm coming.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I own a business. I get it.
I don't believe in coming in on people, but Carl, who keeps chiming in here, Carl is so cheap that he has his daughter roll his cigarettes. So, Carl, I told your secret.
But you know, I hope that moving forward with the Trump administration, we've got another 3 years, knock on wood, and we've got that time to try to sort this out. And I think that we can come up hopefully with a plan where I know taxes for Americans are not going to be eliminated at any tax bracket. It's just not going to happen. However, I think if they looked at things realistically, they got all of the fraud out of the system, got some checks and balances going. We've already started eliminating federal jobs that we don't need. I know Donald Trump just removed a lot of the federal protections for a lot of government workers that saying, hey, if you're not doing your job, you're out of here. It used to be if you got a job at the government, you could never get fired. Remember, they had this veil of protection that they don't have anymore.
Yeah, no, post office is still that way. Post office.
And
they're a mess. So
they can be.
Somebody said, hey, Kevin, you said cigarettes used to be 50 cents a pack. Damn, boy, how old are you? So
I don't smoke. I've never smoked, but I'll tell you, the taxation in this country is out of control. And we talk about Antifa starting a civil war. I'm kind of wondering when our civil war over these taxes is going to begin, because I'm getting to the point where people can't survive this taxation. They just can't. And then to find out, people are barely getting by, but paying their taxes, and then to turn around and find out that their tax money is being used against them. It's frustrating. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, define irony. Yeah, there's a good definition of irony. We all hate taxes. But these personal property taxes, I don't care. I got to keep paying for my truck every year. I paid cash for the truck. Why am I paying taxes on something I already paid taxes on? That's bad.
Or your home.
Yeah,
you pay off your home, then you're still. I had this conversation with my son about his when his father passed away. We talked about his father's home, and I said, the house is almost paid off. But the fact is that even when it's paid off, you still have your taxes and your insurance, and that's still the bulk of the payment. The actual portion that pays for the house itself is just a little tiny bit. The rest is all taxes and insurance. And I think it was a real eye-opening for him, to realize that. And I hope that that's something that changes. And Colonel Adams, one other thing I want to throw in before we start talking about this Nancy Guthrie case is Israel. We talk a lot about Israel and Iran on this show. We've been watching Iran with a lot of patience on our part, and it looks like the talks of their nuclear weapons program being halted or stopped is not happening. That's failing. They're saying no, We're not going to halt our nuclear weapons program. And so therefore we're kind of back to the drawing board. I know there's been a lot more mobilization over the weekend. The United States sending more fighter jets and different things into the Middle East. Now, Israel made a statement last night, and they said they're kind of tired of waiting. They said they're ready. They're poised for a strike against Iran if Iran crosses that red line. But here's the question. What is the red line?
Well, Israel's not going to do anything until Donald Trump gives them the thumbs up. So we might use that as the front to start the whole thing. If Israel goes in and goes after them, then we'll be the second wave. So what a great excuse. Israel did it. We didn't do it. And the 70s, replying to Kevin, he's talking about, I asked him how old he was, remembering cigarettes are 50 cents a pack. He says he's 60. Well, let me tell you about being 60 years old. In my world, you're a young man. So good for you, but quit smoking.
I had to double look at. I've known Kevin for a really long time, back when we were fairly young folks, and I had to do a double take at 60.
Yeah, he's 60. Yeah. So somebody says, "Oh, I'm 60 years old. My back's killing me." I go, "Shut up."
I thought Kevin was younger than me all this time.
Shut up. I don't have that many friends left. They're all dead. They're all dying off. So, but like I say, I got a few years left. My wife calls me the human freak, so for different reasons. Anyway, so you want to go to Nancy and talk about her?
Yeah, I will, because we'll touch base. I'll have a show tomorrow. I'll touch base on anything new coming up with the situation with Iran and some of the other things we've talked about. I talked about the Nancy Guthrie case on Friday, just to kind of fill anybody in on the background. Most people know what it is by now, and that is, of course, is it CBS? I'll have to say I don't know a lot about Savannah Guthrie. It took me a little bit to figure out who she was, but she is a host on the Today Show, I believe it is, and her mother, who is 84 years old, Nancy Guthrie, in Tucson, Arizona, came up missing. So for people who don't know the backstory to this, is that Nancy was with her daughter and her son-in-law at their home, which is only 10 miles away from Nancy's home. That's going to play a very important factor in this case. And they were playing games, had dinner at the daughter's house. Her name is Annie. Her husband is Tommaso. And Nancy took an Uber. This was on a Saturday night. Nancy took an Uber to her daughter Annie's house. They had dinner. They played games. When they were finished, we're told a family member, but we are also told it was Tommaso who drove Nancy home. He claims she got out of the vehicle. He opened the garage door for her. She went into the garage. He closed the door, and then he left. Well, then the next morning, there's a lot of, we can backtrack to this later, but there's been a lot of inconsistencies in this case. One of them being, originally we were told that somebody from Nancy's church, when she didn't arrive, contacted the daughter Annie and said, "Hey, your mom didn't come to church today. We're a little worried." And then Annie and her husband, I'm assuming, went over to Nancy's house and kind of looked around for about an hour, realized they didn't see Nancy, and they called 911. But then that's where the story changes a little bit. Well, really, it turns out Nancy hasn't attended that church since COVID. She actually watched services online. The minister at that church did an interview, and he said, well, he seemed very surprised. He said, well, if a member of our congregation did say that Nancy wasn't online, we don't know who that is. Nobody brought it to our attention. This is the first we're hearing of it, but I guess the investigators will know who that person was. So apparently Nancy didn't log in online to watch her church services that morning. They somebody apparently did, or were led to believe they called her daughter. And then the daughter came over to the home, but they weren't there for an hour. They were there for about 6 minutes before they called 911. Now, when police responded, they did find some blood droplets on the front porch of Nancy's, and supposedly she doesn't use that front door coming in and out. There was some blood evidence found inside, a little bit on her bed. We don't know how much. They won't tell us. What was on her bed was very little. Her phone, her watch was left at home. She wears a pacemaker. It disconnected from her cell phone around 2:30 in the morning. Their cameras were smashed. She had like a Nest doorbell camera and sensors in the home. I think it was like at 1:47 a.m. The Nest doorbell signal lost contact. It was somehow dismantled. And then at 2:12 a.m., her indoor camera, she had a camera indoor, it detected movement. We don't know what kind of movement, but it detected movement. And then by 2:30, I think it was, Nancy's pacemaker lost contact with the signal on her phone. Now then we find out, we thought, well, good, there's cameras, there's all this information. Turns out the camera she had needed a subscription in order to view the footage. She didn't have a subscription, so therefore those cameras are completely useless in any images they may have caught. Now, Colonel Adams, the last part of this story is that investigators have been to Nancy's home many times. They released the scene far too early back to Nancy's family. They went back and decided they made a big mistake by, releasing it that early. They've been out, they've been searching through septic systems. They've been over at the daughter's house. They went in with luminol. They've been taking photos. A lot's been going on between those two houses. They're looking for video of a man seen walking between Nancy's house and the daughter's house. And then, of course, there's the kidnapping aspect, where they have received a total of 3 notes back and forth with somebody who claims to have Nancy, and there's some type of a ransom situation. So that's it in a nutshell. I think that's a pretty full picture of what's taking place. And I'm curious, Colonel Adams, I don't know if you've been following the story, but what you have to add to that.
Well, I got a lot. Just because, I've been in that situation. I mean, I wasn't a hostage, but I dealt with the hostage situation. I delivered ransom money on one occasion, which did not go good for the bad guys. Let me just say that. Yeah, Carl chimed in again, and they did confirm that was her. They're saying that's her blood.
Yeah, it was the DNA from they took several samples of DNA from Nancy's home, and one of them they fast tracked, the blood droplets on the porch, and I believe what's on her bed and what's on the interior of her home was confirmed to be Nancy. Now, Colonel Adams, here's the thing. I have never been in a kidnapping situation. I've never been on either side of that situation. Thankfully, you have been. And this is not the normal work of a kidnap for ransom type crime, because it's extremely rare for Americans in America to be kidnapped for ransom. While Savannah Guthrie is a fairly well-known person in some circles, she makes about $8 million a year. She's worth $40 million. There's a lot of people in this country who make a whole lot more money than that. 84-year-old woman with a lot of health conditions is not going to be your number one person you're going to want to kidnap. There's a lot of risk there. Kidnappers want the money, don't they? They don't want to take that risk on somebody who might die before they even get to wherever their location is. And not only that, but one of the first ransom notes. Well, the first ransom note was sent into a local CBS News affiliate in Tucson, KOLD. The second one was sent into TMZ. People who kidnap people for ransom, they talk to the family. They don't want the media involved. They don't want investigators involved. It's not making any sense to me.
Yeah, the problem is for the bad guys, how do I get the money and how I avoid getting caught? And that's where we're at. But there's a few things that stick out. The amount of money they asked for is $6 million.
It started out as 1 million. Now it's 6 million.
Yeah, well, that's typical. That number means something. It might tell you how many people are involved. Let's say I got an operation going. I'm going to take. I'll pay you guys $1 million. I'm taking $2 million. So there's a definition of why it's 6 million. Well, we won't know till later. The other problem, one of the other problems is, okay, somebody out there tell me, I haven't done the math. How once she gets home, the bad guys enter. How long were the bad guys in that house before they removed her? Does anybody know?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can get it. Well, there's 2 theories to this, but let's just say that it is true. Let's just say that Tommaso truly did. I think authorities are looking at Tommaso as the potential suspect, but let's just say that this is a true kidnapping, and let's say a true kidnapper, which I don't believe for 1 second this is a true kidnapping, but let's say it is, hypothetically. The kidnapper would have been disabled the Nest doorbell camera at around 1:47 a.m. So we know they were on the property at 1:47 a.m. At 2:12 a.m., her interior camera saw movement. Now, was that Nancy's movement? We don't know. Was that the perpetrator in her home? Did she come to the front door and that's how the blood, spatter ended up on the ground there? We just don't know. But we do know that at I think it was 2:27 a.m., 2:30 a.m., something along those lines, Nancy wears a pacemaker. Her pacemaker connects by Bluetooth to her cell phone, to an app on her cell phone. So we know by that time, Nancy was far enough away from the home that it was disconnected. But now we also know that, or we think anyway, the person who did take that doorbell camera, let's just say Nancy, it was her moving in the house. She came up to the door, they grabbed her. Well, they wouldn't have immediately left with her because there is blood inside the house. There is blood on her bed. So it seems like she was attacked in her bed.
Yeah. I don't know who this person is. They said 40 minutes the bad guys were in the house.
Yes.
Why does it take 40 minutes to remove an 84-year-old lady from the house?
Do you think it could take 40 minutes to stage a scene to make it look like a kidnapping?
No. No one's talked about this, but nobody's addressed this issue. If I was them, I would have already been in the house. Now,
and they probably were. We don't know how they got in. There's a reporter who said she got inside information that there was forced entry. Investigators will not confirm that.
Well, if I was going to do I told this is how I would have done it, which I would have, if you use forced entry, which would have alerted Nancy something's happening, right? And whatever forced entry they used, if in fact that's what they did when they got in, they weren't already in there. There's not a whole lot of time from forced entry to get to the bedroom to get to Nancy. Okay. I would have, and my partner would have been dressed like firemen. I'd have done a forced entry, set off a smoke bomb, and told the lady, "Your house is on fire. We're going to take you to safety." And she'd walk right out that door. Right. But that didn't happen. So the blood thing I'm very suspicious of. The amount of money they're asking for, there's something about that. It has to do with the players in the game. That's not a lot of money. I would have asked for a minimum of 10 million, knowing what those people make. But the other thing, when these things happen and it's drawn out as far as it has been, here's a problem between the family and the FBI, or let's just say law enforcement. She just wants her mom back. She don't care about the money. But now we've got law enforcement who want to make an arrest. If they get away with it, who looks bad? Law enforcement. So at some point, the victims, which would, let's just say her daughter, is now got a problem because she can't negotiate with the bad guys. She don't care if she loses the money. She just wants her mom back. So now
I agree.
They're preventing her from doing this because they're law enforcement. Now, the bad guys know one thing. There's no way that law enforcement won't stay in the mix on this thing.
Oh, of course.
So, and they know.
Everything is so scripted when it comes to kidnapping.
I don't care what the FBI tells you, they ain't going away. No.
They're not going to go away. Now, Colonel Adams, I don't know if you've seen any of the videos that the family has released that we see publicly. Now, we have to remember when a family member goes in front of the media or they release this type of video, they are speaking directly to the kidnapper. They're not talking to the rest of us. They're talking directly to the kidnapper. And based on the ransom notes, they're replying back. Everything they read is heavily scripted by the FBI in these cases because the FBI is involved. Now, Colonel Adams, I'm not going to show you the first time or the family has spoken out twice prior. I'm not going to show you those. Those were your typical ransom type videos where they said, we really want our mother back, even though it was kind of weird. They did quote something from Silence of the Lambs, which probably corresponded, was probably a triggering thing between that ransom note. But I'm going to show you the last one. because I believe something changed. I believe that the family knows that their mother is no longer alive. Now, keep in mind, though, that I don't believe this was a kidnapping situation at all. I think this was somebody very close to Nancy. I think they staged it to look like a kidnapping. I think that they, after the fact, they started sending these ransom notes either as, a distraction, a ruse away from the real motive, or, an after the fact extortion attempt to get some extra money. But I'm going to show you this because this is a really strange video message. I think the way they're sitting, the way they're holding each other's hands is weird, first of all. It seems very awkward, but I think the message, this is just my opinion. Well, I'm going to show you this first. I'll give you my opinion later.
We received your message and we understand. We beg you now to return our mother to us so that we can celebrate with her. This is the only way we will have peace. This is very valuable to us, and we will pay.
Okay, so Colonel Adams, what I took out of this video is that they're saying, we want our mother back. She's sitting with her sister Annie and her brother Cameron. We, very awkwardly, weirdly holding hands, by the way. And they want their mother back. They want to celebrate with her. Now, some people think that means celebrate because she just had a birthday, a couple days before she was kidnapped. I and a lot of other people believe that they're talking about, we want to have we understand. They said they understand. I think they're saying they understand she's dead. They want her body back. They want to be able to have a celebration of life type ceremony. And I'm, trust me, I might be reading way too much into this. And then they're saying, yes, we will pay, for you to return her to us. And they're basically saying we will not have peace until we have her back, which that, of course makes sense. Am I reading too much into this?
No, I mean, you can have a dozen different theories on this thing, 100 different theories, but understand that, everything is not as it seems. We are not even close to knowing almost anything.
We don't.
What do you think the sheriff is sitting on this information? There's a lot more. There's a good chance Savannah's talked to him directly. So we'll never know until the whole thing's over with. What I try and do.
But we do know, I don't know if you've seen any of the press conferences, but we do know that the family, at least we're told, yes, sometimes investigators lie to the public. They don't owe us anything, but we are told that the family has had no communication. In fact, what's so weird about this case is that the only communication the family has is these 3 notes that were sent into media stations. And the family is continuously asked for proof of life, and the kidnapper refuses to give proof of life. Now, Colonel Adams, as you probably know, in a real kidnapping situation, it would never be this drawn out. Here we are 8 days later, and a real kidnapping situation. That kidnapper, though, they want to keep that hostage for as little time as they can. They want to get in touch with the family. 48 hours. That's right. They want to get in touch with the family. They want to say, hey, this is the money I want. This is how you send it to me. Here's your proof of life that you don't even have to ask for it. Here's your proof of life. I've got your loved one right here. Taking good care of them. Don't want to hurt them. I want the money. Send me the money. I'll send you your loved one back. It's boom, boom, boom. The family sends the money, and most of the time in these situations, they do get their loved one back. They don't send the money. Their loved one is killed. But I mean, that usually takes place over 72 hours tops. Here we are 8 days later. It took days for them to even send the first ransom note.
Yeah, I'm going basic. Just if what they're putting, and don't forget they can put out false information.
Absolutely so. Absolutely so.
I mean, it's not lying; it's putting out. Lies are a commodity. In this case, they're big, so we're not going to really know a whole lot.
And of course, they want crypto. They want Bitcoin, which is the easiest crypto to track.
Well, the reason I was asked to get involved with this kidnapping years ago was the fact that the guy who got kidnapped told his wife telephonically, whatever you do, do not call the police. Whatever you do, do not call the police.
Right. Yeah, they don't want the police involved.
Right. And then he gave her contact information on me. And so the police weren't aware that this kidnapping had even taken place. And so I was able to take the money, deliver the money, and to make it real short, they decided they want more money.
Mm.
So
And that happened.
they sent me back to get more money. And where they messed up was, it changed everything. Was on my way back, and I said, look, just take $50,000. It's right here. Give me. And the guys sitting in the same room, so they were amateurs. You wouldn't put the body and the bad guys in the same room, place else. So that I immediately knew I'm dealing with amateurs here, which even make them more dangerous. And so I agreed to go back, meet the wife at the hotel again, cross the border for 50 grand more. But where they messed up was, on my way out, they said, I'll give you an example. So the guy had a shotgun, and as I turned around, he hit me with the butt of the shotgun on the right eye, which by the time I came back the second time, I only had one eye. I cracked what they call it, the auricle, where the eye is. Later on, x-rays show they cracked it. Anyway, so I made up my mind right then and there, they're not getting away with this. And I took measures and neutralized the problem and brought him home and the money. I brought it all home.
Which is good. And I wish that this case were as cut and dry as that. But what you're talking about is how most kidnappings are. They're very cut and dry. You know, now it's possible a bunch of teenagers or somebody else is, you know, perpetrating this crime. You know, I don't know, that maybe heard about Savannah Guthrie. I know that Savannah Guthrie recently interviewed her mother, and they talked about their life in Tucson. And a lot of people in the community did say, hey, I didn't even know who. I've seen Nancy. I knew who she was. I had no idea her daughter, you know, was Savannah Guthrie from the Today Show. So I believe that did draw some attention to her. You know, I know that you know, where she lives in the foothills there in just on the kind of on the outskirts of Tucson, and it's an unincorporated area of Pima County. And there is crime there. It's not like there's no crime that occurs. But here's the thing, Colonel Adams, and I know you're not an investigator, you know, a police investigator, but you know, and nor am I. But I think it's still something we can discuss. Is the situation in which now we have to, when it comes to investigations, I read between the lines. I watch the actions more than I watch the words. And now we have a situation where even though investigators say they have no person of interest, why are they at the daughter's house? The last place she was seen was at the daughter's home. Now they have seized the daughter's vehicle. They have gone into the daughter's home multiple times. Most recently, I believe that was today's Monday. Yesterday was Sunday. Saturday night, they went in with luminol, and you could see them in there taking photos. Because, of course, there's a whole gaggle of reporters out there watching every move they make. The family's no longer staying in that home. They have private security there now. So to me, that means investigators think something could have happened. What are they, you know, using luminol for? And why are they taking all these photos? Why did they seize the vehicle? Then we have Nancy's home, in which they have been back to multiple times, searching septic tanks, cisterns, looking through the home. The HOA has asked all of Nancy's neighbors to open their properties up. They have gates. If they have, you know, any enclosures, open them, because investigators are going to be looking around their property. And then we have, now they're asking the neighbors also, any neighbor between Nancy's house and her daughter Annie's house, 10 miles away, they're saying, hey, look at your cell phone, or look at your surveillance cameras, because we were looking for footage of a male on foot walking between these two homes. I mean, doesn't that seem like there's something going on besides a kidnapping? And let me add that they have also now taken Nancy's vehicle. It's a very complex case.
Well, they should have done that the first day.
They should have done it
to that bubble. I mean, why they have CPI's in charge? Why wouldn't they contain all the evidence? And plus, on top of that, who did you say went over to her house to check on her when she wasn't responding, or what? The daughter? I mean, who went over there?
Same daughter. Yeah, the only family member she had in that area that I'm aware of is her daughter and the husband, who live in the home that were the last people to see her.
But did she go by herself? Where's the husband at?
She is not married. Her husband passed away years ago. She is unmarried. She's single. She's 84 years old. She lives in the home alone.
No, I'm talking about the person who went over to check on her. Was the
Yeah,
daughter
that's her
alone?
daughter.
Did
The
she go by
daughter,
herself?
from what I understand, it was her and her husband that both went over
Okay.
there. They have a
I,
12-year-old. I don't know if a child went with them.
yeah, I would think so. If I was a husband, I wouldn't say, "Oh, go to mom's house and see she's still alive." No, I wouldn't. I
Yeah,
wouldn't do
yeah.
that. Okay,
And the
but
husband
here,
is believed to also be the person who dropped her off at home the night before.
okay. As far as I'm not a police investigator, Tabitha, I was the #1 private detective in the world.
Oh, well, yeah. Sorry about that. Yes,
I mean,
you're
come
right.
on. I'm
I wasn't
I'm
even
the only
thinking about it.
I'm the only private detective who's ever been on the cover of Riverfront Times, not once but twice. So, and I made 10 times more money than any other PI. No, I am a detective for 26 years. So the first problem is when I would go into a situation, I've done a lot of homicides, okay? As soon as I would go in, like in the desert, we brought back over 100 or located over 100 corpses in the desert. We never approach the corpse. As soon as we spot it, we either mark sand or put our hats down. So when homicide comes in,
Oh, oh, we have lost Colonel Adams. Can you still hear Colonel Adams? All right, let me see if I can bring him back in. I'm not really sure what happened there. Colonel Adams, let me bring you back in. Are you still there? Oh, no. Can you guys see Colonel Adams? Hi, guys. If you guys can give me an update, if you see, I see Colonel Adams frozen on my screen. I can't hear him. And we'll hopefully bring him back in here in just a moment. I'm not sure what's going on exactly, but he did freeze there for a moment. And I hate it because I was really anxious to hear what he had to say. But I wanted to go back to the to the comments to Carl. Carl says the luminol is total speculation. It's yes, Carl, I agree. The investigators have not confirmed that they use luminol, but I think any of us who have been involved in crime scenes for quite some time, you have firsthand accounts from reporters who were there standing directly in front of the home. They see police go in, they see that the lights go out, they see that they have that black light scanning around, they're taking photos. There's other things it could be also, but I think usually most of the time when that happens, it is luminol. But yes, it's certainly possible it's something else. But the point is not even so much what they sprayed. They definitely did spray something. They definitely did take photos. We know that's a fact because we have too many reporters that were outside and saw these things unfolding. But more is that part of a normal investigation, or is that a little bit extra? I feel like it's a little bit more than what would normally be done. Now, of course, we also know that doesn't mean they found anything. Let's just say that they did use luminol. Let's just say the family told them, hey, we played games here. Our vehicle was parked in the garage, so therefore she got into the vehicle in the garage. Let's say investigators come out and let's just say, for example, they do spray the luminol. And let's say they take the luminol and they take the photos in the garage, they take the photos in the main part of the house, which is where reporters saw them taking photos, then they may not have found anything. They might have found a speck of blood. There's certainly been plenty of investigations where they used luminol and took photos, and then they did take a little swab of a blood splatter, and it turns out to be somebody who lived there who cut their finger, a year prior. So just because they're doing this doesn't mean they necessarily found anything. And I'm not sure if you guys are still hanging in there with me. Colonel Adams hasn't come back yet. I don't even know for sure that I'm still here. I think I am. But I don't know. And let's see here. Carl says, yes, you could see the camera flashes. Okay, so I think we're still here. I don't know what's going on. Hopefully Colonel Adams pops back in. I've only got a couple more minutes anyway to talk. I'm way over time. We don't have any new information. Yesterday, the newest information on that case was just them searching locally. We don't know what they're searching for. Me personally, I feel like Nancy is close by. I have my own theory on what happened. If you read my Facebook page, you can check that out. I'm not going to be super quick to blame the daughter and the daughter's husband. In fact, I hope and pray that it has nothing to do with them. I would hate to think that somebody, like Nancy, just anybody, you live to be 84 years old. The last thing you want to do is be kidnapped, become a hostage, or have crime, come into your home. Certainly not end up being murdered. And it's hard. I remember when my own grandmother passed away. Obviously, naturally, very different circumstances. But it was really hard for me because I kept thinking, man, my grandmother loved her home. She just loved her home. And she loved her home, and it was really difficult to know that she wasn't going to be back in her home. And I feel the same thing for Nancy. I'm sure Nancy loved her home, and it's hard to think that maybe she won't be able to return to that home she loved. And I hope she does. I hope I hope they find her safe. I think the chances of finding her safe at this point are pretty slim. My personal belief is that whoever did this to her came into her home and they probably took her somewhere very nearby, because the last thing they want to do is, get caught having a hostage or worse, a deceased person in their vehicle. I think they took her somewhere very close. And quite honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. We heard investigators state that there was a vehicle, potential suspect vehicle or suspicious vehicle. They saw at a local gas station. And I heard that at one point it was the Circle K. They also stopped by a local Chevron that were very close in proximity to each other to pick up surveillance video. I wouldn't be surprised at all if they didn't see Nancy's own vehicle in that surveillance video. And that's why they came back to the home and took Nancy's vehicle. Now, of course, I am only speculating. I'm only speculating. All right, and people have been jumping all over me for speculating. But you know what? If we all just stuck to the facts, it'd be pretty darn boring now, wouldn't it? Okay, Colonel Adams back with us. We're only going to continue on for another couple moments. Thank you, Colonel Adams, for taking the time to come back with us. I'm not sure what happened, but thank you for joining us. And Colonel Adams, you've probably still heard everything we've been talking about. Do you have anything else to add to the situation, the missing case of Nancy Guthrie? And by the way, there's another person missing now in Pima County, just a few miles away from Nancy's home. He was apparently, his name was James Kelly. He was hiking. Something has happened to him. They have not yet located him after several days of searching.
Well, that happens all the time.
Sure does. Sure does.
I still find it, they either know or they're dumb that nobody's talking about the cartel. I mean, the cartel is up and running business in Tucson.
But I think the cartel would be more organized than what this potential kidnapper is.
Well, I'm not talking about El Chapo level. I'm talking about, they have different groups, different teams. I know they have specialized people just for kidnapping, and nobody keeps talk about it. So they had to have considered that right off the bat.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
So it's much easier to get rid of a body down there in Mexico than it is up here. So
correct.
The thing is, right now, if this keeps continue on and they go with what they're planning, they're not getting her back. And they won't get the body back because the body will have the forensic that can lead them to the bad guys.
Correct.
So if they don't do this pretty soon and they do get rid of her, they're not getting the body back. And because they suffer from cross contamination in that house right to begin with. When they went over to check on Nancy, they contaminated the place.
Correct.
And so then I had to take detectives back in as detectives say, okay, show us what you did step by step when you got here to read the contamination. So it's a mess.
It is a mess. Now, if it's a real kidnapper, which there's not one iota of my body who thinks this is a real kidnapping situation, but let's say if it is hypothetically a real kidnapping situation, and let's say that Nancy is alive, if they pay the ransom, I do think they'll let Nancy go. However, if Nancy is deceased, and I believe that is what likely has transpired based on that video released by her family, no, they're not going to release her body if she's deceased. Like you just said, Colonel Adams, there's going to be too much evidence there, and this person has no protection from law enforcement. At that point, they don't have any bargaining chip. So I don't expect them to release the body. But now, however, since I don't think it's a kidnapping to begin with, I think it's all a ruse, a distraction, maybe an extortion attempt. I do think that it's possible that this person who may be just trying to extort the family might give them a location of the body, because if they were dumb enough to do all this to begin with, they might be dumb enough to say, all right, you can find Nancy here or there. Now, the other part of that is because I do think it was somebody close to Nancy. I don't know who, but I do think it was somebody within Nancy's either immediate circle or intermediate circle, maybe a housekeeper, somebody who knows housekeeping, somebody who knows the pool guy, something along those lines, somebody who's, randomly coming through the neighborhood and has run into her before. Then they probably dumped the body somewhere nearby, and it's probably going to be at some point located. Now, those are just my opinions,
If they do, they'll burn the body. I mean, she's a walking crime
Maybe they
lab.
already have.
Yeah, I mean, she's a walking crime lab. She's the forensic evidence to track down who did this. So they're not going to get the body back. And if they do get the body back now, we're dealing with amateurs. Pros would never, ever do that. Anyway, God bless you. It's got to be tough.
It is a tough situation. And Nancy's not the only one. And Colonel Adams, I know we don't have time to get into it today, but I've talked.
It's on her end.
Handled those cases. Oh, we're just moving around. Law enforcement handled those cases very differently as well. And we'll talk about Betty's case. I'll talk about Betty's case another day this week. But there are a lot of cases, and people do need to pay attention to all cases. But it's definitely the public interest and the media, because of the public interest, that has kept this case in the news.
I told my wife a couple of days ago, wait till the complaints start. The complaints being, I've had my daughter missing for 3 years and I've never even got on TV.
Right.
So
right. Valid complaints.
When this is over with, wait till you hear the complaints.
It's already happening. I've been addressing it on social media, and and Colonel Adams, I want to know if you agree with me on this. I've been telling people who have brought this up is that yes, because of Savannah Guthrie being who she is and her knowing a lot of people, there is certainly a lot of attention on this case. There's certainly a lot of law enforcement officers working. But here's the thing. Do you really think Pima County is putting more attention into solving this case because it's in the public than they would any other case in the county? I think they're going to use the same resources for this case as they would anyone else. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah, you're wrong. No, this is an embarrassment to the department. They're going to do everything. They've dropped other cases to take this case up. They have to. This is an embarrassment to the department.
Well, I was hoping you would say the opposite of that, because
they're basically covering their ass. They've got to.
Yeah.
They're in trouble.
Well, the scrutiny is definitely on them. They've certainly, in my opinion, have made some mistakes. They released the home far too early to the family. As soon as I heard that, it was like they went in, they took some DNA samples, then released the home to the family. I'm like, are you crazy? Why would you do that? This could potentially turn into something more. And you've already allowed the family to come back in to contaminate the scene. And then they didn't do a full search. They didn't search the roof. They didn't search the grounds. They didn't search down in these cistern septic tanks. And I think they made a lot of mistakes.
Yeah, but the reason you see them keep reappearing tells me one thing. They're at a dead still. They're not getting anywhere. So the detectives are telling the sheriff and the FBI, well, we did this. Well, go do it again.
Right.
This is a go. We got nothing else to do. Go do it again.
But some of this stuff, though, they didn't do to begin with. They literally did not do it to begin with. I just asked somebody the other day, have they been out with metal detectors yet? A reporter who's out there, they're like, well, we've not seen them out with metal detectors. I'm like, why wouldn't they have metal detectors out there? There's so many different things that they should have covered. They should have covered every inch of that property on day one, and they didn't do it. So they've had to make multiple. Now, I will say, Sheriff Nanos has publicly stated that they have made mistakes.
Well, that's I wouldn't have. No, this repeat business. All they're doing is doing more on the same thing. This is stay busy. What else do we have to do? Just go do it again. Well, sir, we've already done it twice. Then do it 3 times. What else you got to do?
You have to, right? You do. You have to keep going back and back and back.
And
Carl says,
"Oh,
I'm back."
Hey, Tabitha. Metal detectors don't work in the desert.
They don't? Why not?
Too much iron ore scattered. They go
I did
off
not know that.
Yeah, you can't. There's so much volcanic activity when these places are being developed, and they shut off all this iron ore. No, dumb me took it to an abandoned farmhouse and tried to sweep it, and it was like it was everywhere because of the iron ore from the old volcanoes. You can't use.
Oh, here, Colonel Adams, I did not know that. Thank you for sharing that with me. Tara has a great point here. And this is so funny to me. And Tara, I'm so glad you mentioned this because I was thinking about this last night. The very first night when the day Nancy was reported missing, okay, the investigators did not use light to search the property because in that area, they have a rule, I think it's like an HOA rule, where they can't have spotlights or lights at night because it interferes with, is it Tara? It interferes their light ordinance because it protects the desert for stargazers. That's right, a bunch of liberal BS. Because they have stargazers in the area, they don't allow any light. Now, you know good and well that if those investigators, that sheriff said, hey, we had to use spotlights, we have a crime scene here, I don't think any of the neighbors would have complained, but maybe they would have. And can you imagine putting off an investigation, not completing all your duties because you're worried about an HOA ordinance for stargazers?
Yeah, well, that is true, but I don't believe that particular comment about the crime scene at night. No, I don't know who started that, but I've been to that community, so I know the layout.
Oh, it's true. Colonel Adams, what I just told you is 100% true and verified. The sheriff discussed it. They did not look over Nancy's property the night she was reported missing because they didn't want to use spotlights because the HOA forbid it.
Oh, that's going to come back to haunt them. Oh my God!
I hope it does. It does.
It's terrible. All we can, hopefully, there's a lot more information that we don't know. The scary thing is, if this is it, we're in trouble.
I think we have a lot of information. You have to remember there's technologists in the background, these forensic technology folks. They're trying to track IP addresses. And a lot of people think, well, if I use a VPN or a burner phone or a crypto address through VPN, all these things, that I'm safe. But these days, that's just not the case. They're triangulating cell phones. They're working on her pacemaker pings. There's so many things going on in the background. And when all this technology comes full circle, we're probably going to find out who this person was. I don't think they can hide from the technology these days.
I hope not. I really hope not. It was a lot simpler when I was doing these things. Like I say, I delivered cash. I know some kind of invisible money. Hey, Tab, thanks for having me. And
thank you for joining us, Colonel Adams.
Yeah, and by the way, his name's Dumb Bunny, not the Bad Bunny. Carl, thanks, guys. And I'll see you next Monday unless something blows. And in fact, maybe tentative Friday, if this thing blows up, and we'll have some more stuff. So
we very well may. Well, Colonel Adams of the Washington Guard, if you guys want to reach out to Colonel Adams of the Washington Guard, you can do that at patriots@thewashingtonguard.com. Take a look at their website, send them an email. They'll send you a newsletter if you subscribe, but definitely take a little time out to do that.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Colonel Adams. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will look forward to speaking to you this week. All right, that's Colonel Joe Adams of the Washington Guard. If you want to reach out to Colonel Joe Adams, it's patriots@thewashingtonguard.com. Please do that. Subscribe to their newsletter. For anybody new to the show, they offer some women's self-defense classes. It is a militia. It is, and don't think of that with negative connotations. They do a lot of good for the people, recoveries, storm, they help you out if we have a catastrophe. There's a lot of different things they do over there, and certainly good with planning. Carl says, get your comms up. That's right, Carl. And Tara says, a border patrol guy brought it up. He said they should have done it anyway and dealt with the lawsuit later. Tara, I know. And I saved that video, but when I was trying to pull it up this morning, I couldn't get it to load. But I do have a video of the Border Patrol. He's like a Border Patrol commander of some type. And he was out there and he gave a very, forthright interview. And I believe it was it with Fox National? And he stated the exact same thing, that, hey, they should have been out here that first night, securing the scene, going over, basically with a fine tooth comb. And then he did go on to talk about, and I'm sure kind of laughed behind the scenes about, hey, the reason why they didn't use the spotlights is because the HOA has this rule where they want everything to be very dark and they don't want spotlights. They don't like lights. And man, I hope things change because of, I hate what happened to Nancy, but at the same time, maybe if the property was a little bit more lit up because they didn't have all these ridiculous rules, maybe Nancy, could have seen anything out of place, or Tommaso could have seen something out of place when he first pulled up, if indeed anything was out of place. But guys, that's it for me today. I have got to run. I'm actually 50 minutes over the time that I had planned to end the show. But I talk a lot. You guys probably know that. I talk a lot. It's supposed to be an hour show, usually an hour and a half, 2 hours. I got to start fine-tuning that to get myself out of here on time so I can get to work. Duty does call. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Tara says, the guy I spoke with, Brian Enton. Oh, I love Brian Enton. He was wearing plain clothes and a cowboy hat. Yep, same guy that I have on my video. And maybe I'll play that tomorrow. I will be here tomorrow. As of right now, as you guys know, my work schedule is a little iffy. I don't expect to get called into work tomorrow, so I do expect to be here. But either way, that's it for me today. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Of course, if you want to follow along on my personal Facebook page under Tabitha Hassell, I've been giving lots of case updates as often as they can come to me. So thank you, everyone, for joining me today. Happy Monday. Enjoy this beautiful weather if you're here in the St. Louis area. Have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow.